imprisoned here for a long, long time. We know we were punished, though we've committed no crime, to fight for our country and die perhaps, but we're here because we happen to be Japs. We all love life and our country best. Our misfortune to be here in the West, to keep us penned behind that damn fence, is someone's notion of national defense.
There once was a time where America, the land of the free, the home of the brave, and the land of opportunity, became a land of captives, a home of hysteria, and a land of stolen dreams. Like other ethnicities, Japanese immigrants initially came into America hopeful and desperate for the benefits and promises of the American dream. Due to a significant turning point event, all Japanese Americans' dreams and hopes for the pursuit of happiness and prosperity were taken from them. The stage was set with the commencement of World War II, igniting the fear of Japanese presence in the American nation.
December 7th, 1941, the United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
Congress voted for war on Japan. The incident of Pearl Harbor caused Americans anxiety over the possibility of threatening Japanese spies and air invasions to multiply. In addition to threats, there were thousands of Japanese Americans in the US who simply appeared to be the enemy. The distressed American public posted signs, printed propaganda, and publicly released news media displaying the perilous Japanese enemy throughout the nation. This caused Japanese Americans to be disrespected by the public for having the physical appearance of the enemy. This ethnic tension caused racial segregation and hysteria to escalate in America, adding on to pre-existing prejudice towards Japanese Americans. The frightened people of America demanded for a sign from the government that there would be retribution and retaliation for the attack of Pearl Harbor.
As fear heightened, Military General John L. DeWitt recommended President Franklin D. Roosevelt to issue Executive Order 9066 to ensure the safety of the West Coast. On February 19, 1942, President Roosevelt agreed to sign the executive order authorizing and prescribing regulations for the conduct and control of alien enemies to prevent further acts of Japanese espionage. After receiving a 2-week notice, loyal Japanese Americans forcibly retired from all that they loved, leaving behind their homes, businesses, and farms.
The words that they used, the poster that all aliens, all persons of Japanese ancestry, both alien and non-alien, that's American citizen. See, they use that so it doesn't sound so bad.
112,000 Japanese Americans arrived at the internment camps, perceived as the enemy, lurking to strike.
They've sunk the posts deep into the ground. They've strung out wires all the way around, with machine gun nests just over there, and sentries and soldiers everywhere.
At 16 and head of the family, I got to thinking about the German concentration camps. And you're saying, hey, we're going into something like that, the death cap, so to speak. What would you think? I mean, how would you feel, with something like that, Because you never know what kind of a, camp they're going to send us to. The camp that we went into, the county fairgrounds, it had barbed wire fences, and of course the guards. And then they're all saying, hey, the guards were there for our protection, But no, the guards were pointed out inwards, not outward. So it's not actually a protection for the people coming in, the outside world. So the guards had towers, of course, with guns pointing at us.
On September 8, 1942, Fred Korematsu, a Nisei amongst all Japanese Americans, refused to be relocated and was arrested for defying military orders issued under the executive order. He challenged the order's validity of constitutionality for the evacuation of American citizens on a racial basis. By December 18th, the U.S. Supreme Court reached a 6-3 verdict, voting the executive order as a justified military necessity for national security. Korematsu was then sent to Capitol Pass for the duration of the war. It is a fact that there were no documented reports of disloyal Japanese Americans. On the contrary, during the war, a total of 33,000 Japanese men and women were enlisted in the 442nd Regimental Combat Team, the most decorated battalion in the Second World War, defending their country with courage and honor.
On August 14, 1945, World War II ended. The racial fears disintegrated and led to the full release of all Japanese Americans. Returning from the camps, the Japanese Americans came to find their homes and property gone or owned by another American family. The Japanese Americans had been deprived of everything and had to re-establish themselves in the society they were once a part of. On August 10, 1988, President Ronald Reagan took initiative in recognizing America's mistake on the internment camps of Japanese Americans.
Yet no payment can make up for those lost years. So what is most important in this bill has less to do with property than with honor. For here we admit a wrong. Here we reaffirm our commitment as a nation to equal justice under the law.
Reagan signed the Civil Liberties Act of 1988 into law, writing a presidential letter of apology to each Japanese internee. In 1989, President George H.W. Bush signed another bill delivering $20,000 as a compensation of their losses. America as a nation had admitted their own errors and widened the path for equality, showing political leadership and civil liberties, reassuring that such a tragic mistake would not reoccur.
The internment of Japanese Americans is a turning point in American life for many reasons. First, it affected American culture and law a great deal. It's the first time in modern times that a government has acted that way against its own citizens, and it showed what racism can do in a time of emergency.
Our dear nation has endured air attacks by the kamikaze on Pearl Harbor and terrorists on September 11. Despite the agony, America has managed to heal all of its wounds. Though we fear possible invasions, what we need to concern ourselves with are our true enemies that destroy our nation: hysteria, racism, and prejudice. In times of hysteria and distress, we need to trace back to the term "we the people." When challenged by rising tribulations, we must understand that our Constitution speaks the same language at times of war and peace. And despite racial differences, we, the people, are bound by the Constitution, willing to stand and defend itself from all adversaries. From the incarceration of Japanese Americans, we see that under elevated times of distress, the American government is liable to extensive conduct in order to satisfy torments caused by national potential threats. America now testifies that it is willing to boldly guard their future by the remembrance of the past.
It makes me happy that you pick a topic like this, because just in general, when the Japanese and Japanese Americans came out of camp, they had a reputation. They were known as the quiet American because nobody ever wanted to talk about it. It's like the soldiers that went into combat and they don't want to talk about it. It was the same thing. No one talked about it.
The incarcerations, persecutions, and racial prejudices of Japanese Americans were a turning point because it solidified the protection of civil rights in order to preserve social freedom and equality.
I and some of the others recognize what happened, and we wanted to show that it's we hope it never happens to anybody, any race.